Yo, what's good, people? Happy Monday to you. Hope you're all doing well. Had a good weekend. All that jazz. We're going to dip back into some educational stuff again today. I think drums is the topic of conversation, or at least drum-like sounds. We'll talk about that. Yo, what up, Saf? How are you? Liquid Phase, welcome in, bright and early. Unfortunately, I heard the news we're not moving because our house is not selling. Oh, Saf, okay. So, sticking around in the same place. Guess that means you've got room for your vinyl after all, huh? Paul's tuning in from cloudy Maryland. It is like impervious cloud cover today. Moist ground, but not currently precipitating. That's the full report from Portland. Oh man, dude, Saf, that sucks. Yeah, that's true. You guys have spent all of this time moving a whole bunch of stuff already. Man. Bunch, welcome in. Salutations, happy Monday to you. How are things? It's Alan. Welcome in. Happy Monday to you. So I posted the last couple of weeks to the Discord classroom channel here. My apologies for getting those up late, and I'll post the other one today. And the next one is drums. So it's just kind of carrying over from the moving from presets and samples and intro to sampling into drums. And I know that most people in here know how to load up a sampler with a basic sound, or use a step sequencer or whatever to trigger your drum sounds. So we'll try and make it a bit more fun than just the basics on that stuff. But we will start with just the basics, and we'll move through an assortment of tools. Keep in mind that this particular curriculum was written several years ago. So Polyplex at the time, which we'll take a quick look at today, and other hybrid models were very much still in their emergence phase. People who were super geeky into this stuff had their fingers into those things prior to that, especially people who were not afraid of using reactor. But we'll get to that. And we'll also talk about just building your own kits. So in the process of that, in the process of like just kind of going through the ups and downs, the pluses and minuses, whatever, of using a traditional keyboard style controller and or layout for your mapping of samples versus a pad base, right? Like a grid, like a drum machine style. We'll take a look at both of those, and while we're going through that, we'll also talk about a couple of little hacks that you can use, some tips for layering sounds in creative ways, combining sampling and synthesis in really cool and clever ways. So people will always be wondering, how the hell do they get those juicy textures and sounds? Because we like that. We'll also talk a bit about using found sounds, which is good timing because this month's free sound pack is found sounds for beat makers. And we'll talk creative processing and effects. So I'm actually, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking, yeah, we're definitely going to be spending some time at Polyplex today. But before we dig into that, we'll wait for probably a few more people to arrive. So tell me what you got up to this weekend. Tell me what you're working on. And I want to know, has anyone dipped into the found sounds yet? Start playing with them. Allegromancer's here. Ah, perfect. How you need to up your drum game. Nice, nice. The Merits is here. Welcome in, brother. How are you this fine day? Let's see here. If we're going to be talking kontakt, I can load up a kontakt. And we won't go too in-depth about multi-output routing yet at this point. Just kind of know that maybe I should plug in my hard drive here. Just know that when possible and when to your liking, work in multi-output mode. This basically just means that you're going to have an opportunity. If you have a drum kit of 4 different sounds, you could have those 4 different sounds each have their own individual track in your arrangement window. You need to be running in a multi-output mode to do that with most DAWs. And all the tools that we'll be looking at have the capability to do that. So just really quick, while we're, I guess, in that vein of conversation here, this is what those outputs would look like inside of Logic. And you'll find similar in other DAWs, but you're going to be choosing between a mix of mono and stereo, or just mono, or just stereo. Some DAWs also allow you to output to 5.1 or bigger, mono and stereo. So just knowing what you're wanting to operate in and why is good. Usually if I do a multi-output for drums, it's going to be a mix of stereo and mono, because I will want to tend to put kind of an eclectic palette of sounds together. So some of those sounds I want to be like delayed and in stereo space. And others I am totally fine with them being mono, like my kick, of course. Oh, Zamarit spent last night on Damien's course for 6 hours learning compression and saturation. Very cool. Very cool. Quite in-depth. That's rad, dude. How is Damien? Missed that, homie. I'm sure he's crazy, crazy busy. I can relate to that. Saffron says, what type of frequency do you think a car going down would be in? You mean like a car zooming past, like a flyby sound effect? Yeah, I bet he's busy with all you. How many people are in your rotation right now? So Saf, this is highly dependent upon the car, like the type of vehicle that you're playing with. It's highly dependent. Like for instance, is it you know, an electric vehicle or a gas guzzler? Is it a Ferrari or is it a Pinto, right? Is it going really fast or is it going slow? 18 people, dude, that's busy. That's busy. All right. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. It sounds like a really good one, yet again. All right, so I've loaded up kontakt. We will load up, let's load up some reaktor. Oh, and maybe some machine. Or some battery, rather. Let's put battery on here. So we'll put kontakt on this first one. Things are opening slowly this morning. Why is that? Is it because of my external? Oh, I think I know why. I think I moved a bunch of files and did not run a backup afterwards, so there's probably some mapping happening. All right, so let's see here. Some battery. We could put in just like a logic one. I don't think we really need to, but... Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Oh, there it is. Drum Machine Designer. It's always separate, and I don't know why. Okay, and let's also put an instance of reaktor in here, because we know we'll be getting us up to some goodness. Yeah, it must be my external that's dragging. Okay, so we'll call this one reaktor. And I know that we'll play with a couple, but let's load up polyplex in here for sure. And we'll just use the stock one for that. All right. Oh, that's right. Of course. Drum kit designer in Logic just kind of automagically opens in multi-output for those keeping track of workflows. Hey, Liquid Phase is kicking in with some insights here, Saf. Car noises, frequency shifting rumble at 35 hertz, some mid growl at 500 hertz, some hiss at 2K. A Doppler VST, or move it in, shift it in both pitch and pan position and volume. Mm-hmm. Right? Paul, I'm just reading your comment about hearing your buddy's car from blocks away. Yeah. Right? Thank goodness for free sound. Roku's in the house. Happy Monday, Roku. Darn it, just prepared the whole apocalypse and you tell me my music isn't good for zombie outbreaks? You get your zombie evasion skills up high enough, and everything becomes valuable again. Roll a d20. Oh, okay. So in talking drums, kind of like how we were talking the last few weeks about how lines have been blurred, like drums aren't just drums anymore, right? We're messing with drums just as much as we are any other sound, from layering things together to substituting fully to, processing in wild and like transforming ways. Lots of stretching these days. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that drums and drum sounds have been reimagined, just like everything else has been. So just kind of understanding quickly how to get the types of sounds into the types of tools to get you the types of results that you want. Hey! Guess who's here? Besides our gazelle, it's Voss. How you doing, brother? How are things? All well, I hope. Shout out to Phosphor Visual. Go check him out. Give him a sub. See what he's up to. Dude is brilliant. Paul, I knew guys like that for sure. His buddy gutted the interior of his car and basically had a 1,000-watt sound system. Yeah. There were definitely friends' cars that I like rode in once, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm ever getting into that thing again. Like, I couldn't walk straight after being in there. It was such a massive, massive assault. Oh my goodness. This was back in the days of like glass packs and like hydraulics, and kids in like my junior high and high school were going to car shows on the weekends to like learn how to install sound systems and stuff. Oh my goodness. Nice, nice, Foss. Good to hear you're keeping busy. Good to hear that the shows are still flowing. Subvids, welcome in, brother. How are you? Happy Monday to you. Yeah, yeah, definitely good to hear that. All right. So typically, you're going to be one of two kinds of people. You want either everything to have its own track, and you're going to organize it in a very piecemeal fashion, loading like one sound into one instance of contact, and then loading another sound into another instance of contact or sampler, right? And that's how you're maintaining your separation of sounds. There are other ways to do that, and we can load up just a really quick multi-sample instrument to show you the basics of that, and then you can just let your mind go crazy as you explore those possibilities. But I do hear every once in a while from people when they're first getting started that they wish they could use a tool like Kontakt for their drums, but they're always going to the drum pad style sampler. So just really quick for those who don't know how to do that yet, let's just go find a quick drum sound. And samples, drums, kits. We'll just put in this very first one here. We'll take a kick, and that will be what we start the whole thing with. So I'm just dropping a wave file into Kontakt, which generates a new instrument. So it's just a kick. And if I click this little wrench, it's the configuration button here. It takes us to the back end. And I can close our browser over here so it's not distracting. You go into your mapping editor, and this yellow area here across this range of keys is where your sample is currently loaded. So if you wanted your kick to be on C1, for instance, you could quite literally just click on this yellow key right here and drag it down to C1. That sets your root note at C1, which means that if you play C1, that kick is going to play in the same pitch and playback speed and everything that it was heard originally. If I play C2, it's going to play back quicker, and it's going to play at a higher pitch. If we want that to be a different sound, and we only want our kick to be active on C1, or maybe just C1 and C2, all we have to do is grab the edge of this yellow region on both sides and just drag it across the keys that we want. So right now I actually have it mapped from C1 to C2, which is 3 keys, because there's one black key in there. I don't want the pitch to be affected this time, though. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change my source. Now, when you first open up the back end of Kontakt, it will be right here. And if you've already opened up your mapping editor, which opens up right underneath these buttons, you'll just see that it's moved down just a little bit. So right now it's direct from disk, which means it's pulling the sample direct from your hard drive. And what we can do then is switch this to one of these other modes that will not affect pitch and playback speed. So maybe we'll pick this MP60. It's a classic choice for sampling drums. So now they're all playing back at the same speed, at the same rate, and there is also a pitch difference. I'm going to keep it that way. I'm going to add a snare. So let's say that I want this snare and that I want it to start on, let's see here. The first one was mapped to C1 to D2, or to D1, right? So I'm going to set the next one from E1 to F1. So it really is just that easy. Vertically, it's mapping velocity. So for most folks, just building a basic kit, you don't even have to worry about this. If you really want something else to happen at a higher velocity, all you have to do is drop the sample that you want into a higher velocity space. I'll give you a quick example. So we used the first kick the first time. I'm going to use this kick this time. I'm going to bring it up and over. So what I've just done there, by moving that sample into this range right here, this means that my first kick sample is going to play when I play a low velocity note. And when I play a high velocity note, it's going to trigger this other kick. In fact, both of these sounds are interesting. I kind of want them flipped though. So I'm actually going to do this. So you can just drag and drop and work kind of freely in this space. So now this one is the low velocity and high velocity. So you can let your mind kind of run with this, but whatever keys you want to trigger a sound, you just simply drag that sound across those keys horizontally. And then the amount of velocity that you're applying can also trigger sounds on those keys. So just kind of keep that in mind. Just checking for questions on the super basics here. Thank you much, Liquid Phase. We will be here, homie. Have a good one. And they can overlap. Yes. Yes. Can they overlap is a good question. And yes, they can. In fact, they can overlap however you like. So let's say we actually want the low end kick to kind of overlap with the high end kick for maybe half the range of that high end kick. Now, I've gone so far over the years as to take one sample and affect it in a multitude of different ways to create different sounds. So you get a lot of variation from the same pad. You can also obviously put in totally different recordings. The way that the really good multi-sampled instruments are made is that the sound will actually be captured at different velocities. So you're getting a reaction from, especially when you're talking about drums, you're getting a reaction from surrounding reverberations and interactions there as well. It's not just the velocity of the impact itself. But there's a lot of different things that actually occur with increased velocity or decreased velocity. It's not just amplitude. There's a range of things that are affected. So if you want a really truly authentic sampled instrument experience, you're probably going to have a whole bunch of samples in there, right? And the more expressive and dynamic the instrument type, then of course the more samples and the more meticulous the mapping then becomes. But for just getting started, it's totally fine to just have a handful of sounds in there, toss them on the keys that you want. The different source modes do affect playback. So let's just run through those really quick. In sampler and DFD, you guys heard that the pitch and the playback speed are both affected. There's tone machine, which is going to give you access to like formant type sounds. Think like almost kind of vocoder-ish at times. And then you've got Time Machine, which gives you access to granular stuff, grains. And then you've got Time Machine 2, which gives you more control over transient size manipulation. And then there's Time Machine Pro, which gives you legato and high quality mode, allows you to reverse stuff. It does take up a little bit more CPU. All of these will allow you to affect pitch but not playback speed. Is that right? Yes. Okay, so they all play back at the same speed, and they do still pitch stretch, right, track as you go up and down your keys. If you ever want that turned off in any of your modes, all you have to do is press this tracking key, and that's it. Now they all play at the same, no matter which key you're pressing. Tracking is what that is. Okay, and then there's the Beat Machine, the S1200, and the MP60. These are emulations of classic gear, basically. Like they're stretching algorithms and stuff. Okay, so that's the basics of setting up a quick little kit inside of Kontakt. And we can delve into a much deeper look at all of that at some point. Most DAWs nowadays have some sort of a kit designer tool where you've got this kind of classic pad look, and then you simply drop samples onto them. So we'll just take that same kick. So this is all apples to apples here. And I'm just going to drop this right here. That means that that same kick is now being triggered by C1, just as it was over here in Kontakt. And you can hear this one is running in a specific mode right now. And this one. There's a slight difference between the two. It's kind of interesting. So it does matter what you open it up in and what mode you're running in and whatnot. Just like any other tool out there with a drag and drop interface and with a classic drum machine pad style approach to the UI, you're going to get access to amplitude, pitch, pan, a small range of tools to play with that. The more robust the tool, obviously, the more you can do with them. The drum machine designer inside of Logic is actually just the sampler with a different interface, with a pad style interface instead of keys. So whatever you could do with the sampler, you could basically do with the drum kit designer as well. So it's pretty robust. But for the remainder of the pad style stuff, I think we should probably just look at Battery, since not everyone is playing in Logic, and Battery does do a really good job of like with the interface and the tool set. It does a really good job. There are a ton of presets that you can open in any one of these tools, depending upon what libraries you have. One nice thing that Battery does offer is the ability to redraw your grid. So by default, it opens up in this really big one, but you can go into this little drop down menu here and go into cell matrix and then size, and then choose what you want. Maybe you're just like a classic 4x4 person and you just want something that looks like, you know, your old MPC or machine or a Kai or whatever. So here's a 4x4, and we can do the same thing that we did before. We can just grab our kick and we can put it on A, and we can go in and we can grab our snare and put it here. Okay, so now these are mapped. And maybe I actually want this one over here, so it's easier to trigger for me because these are the white keys. Maybe I do want a second kick. So I could just copy that over. I just held down the Alt Option key and clicked and dragged over. And I'm going to do the same with my snare. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because this gives me the chance to either set up a modifier on one of these or allows me to articulate quicker, right, across two keys instead of one key. So you can get some more kind of organic rapid fire stuff happening. The nice thing about battery when you're using this tool specifically is that if you go over to the, what is it, setup? Yeah, setup. You can actually add things like MIDI echo, for instance, on just one sample. Right, so you can have one that's got like this, you know, this little roll, or maybe we've got a little pitch bend. Maybe we just want it. It just becomes easier and easier and easier to start making organic stuff when you start playing with the delivery of one of your sounds, and then you have your other one kind of normal, because it mimics what we're doing with our hands, right? So just kind of taking some pressure off of you to, you know, handle everything through like these really small MIDI edits or whatever. You just don't need to do that with today's tools, which is cool. You can also set up things like choke groups and all sorts of stuff to get really complex in your deliveries and your treatment of sounds. But just because things look like this and not through an array of keys doesn't mean that you are like tethered to just one sound. You can still layer sounds and stuff in a tool like this, which is really cool. In fact, if we want to, we can take, it's a little more tedious. Let's just take this, and we're going to, oops. Go to our regular main page here, and, or is it master? No. Oh, duh, it's right up here. I was looking for it here on my tabs. It's been a minute. So right here in this main panel here, you have your key range, your root key. This one right here is D1. If we want that to be D1, we can quite literally So all I did was I clicked this little MIDI button right here, and which engages MIDI learn, and then I press the key that I want it to trigger, or that I want to trigger it. And now both of these keys, or both of these sounds, are on the same key. They don't have to be next to each other in the grid though. Okay, so if I actually wanted that shaker to be triggered at the same time as my kick, I can do that as well. So I would just, again, I would just click the MIDI learn, and then now, oh, wait a minute. There we go. It took a second. And there's lots of other things that you can do in regards to layering and stuff inside of Battery. It's not going to give you the same kind of results as what we'll look at in a little bit, which is a bit more of a modern or a bit more modern approach. So this is we're kind of looking at the natural progression of all of this, right? The different ways in which you can layer, and these were introduced in succession. So one of the big upsides to using a tool like this for your drum stuff is if you're using a drum pad controller, right? Like Machine or an Akai or a launch pad or whatever, right? It's easily mapped, like visually everything syncs up. So there's no even small amount of translation between looking at a keyboard interface on your screen and playing on drum pads on your controller, or vice versa, right? Because those things do kind of take up a little bit of bandwidth, right? Even if you're really used to it. There are a whole bunch of really cool things that you can do that are very much focused toward beat making and like drum treatment inside of this tool. So let's just take a look at those really quick. Let's say you wanted to saturate this. There's different saturation modes and models in here. You can hot swap the order in which these effects are being applied. There's lo-fi, filter, and EQ. And of course, you can process these things in tandem or separately. There's compression, and there's different types. And there are presets. There's also a transient master, a lot of different modulation capabilities, just like most synths that you'll find, or samplers nowadays, you'll find the ability to toss an LFO onto pitch or volume or something to make it flutter or bend or whatever. And then those can have shared assignments as well. Setup, which is where you're going to set your, your start and end points for your sample, your voicing, your groups, your choke groups or whatever. You're also going to be able to control things like articulation and MIDI echoes, like I mentioned earlier, as well as some humanizing. Now, there was also, and we're getting to this in the order in which these kind of things were brought into reality. There was a question earlier about round robins. Now, each of these can do round robin kind of functionality. And you can also create kind of pseudo round robin things as well. Each of those kind of require a bit more advanced understanding, and it's kind of need based, right? So basically, a round robin means that you've got a collection of sounds in a sample pool, and each time you hit a key, you're going to get a different sound from that pool. And there's different ways in which you can do this. You could do this sequentially, or you could do this randomly. And like I said, you can also do this in a way that is fake. Like, you don't have a large collection of samples, but you do want them. You do want your sample to be served up in a variety of ways. Okay, so when you're first starting out, odds are that you're probably going to be manipulating a single sound or just a couple of sounds to get the effect that you want, because you're not going to have a whole bunch of different sounds to draw from. So let's just run through that really quick. Hey, and Dremy is here too. How you doing, homie? And yeah, Zamerits, yeah, absolutely. Definitely great with vocal sample. Yes, velocity-based modulation. There's a range of things that you can use to trigger certain events or changes inside of kontakt. And the same applies to these different tools. It's a little bit harder to find those options in kontakt. So let's look at it in kontakt and just know that these rules can apply to these other tools. There's just an additional step inside of kontakt, that's all. So going back to this instrument that we made a moment ago. Oh, we don't have anything. Let's map this one out. There we go. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this sample. It's our snare sample, okay? And this is pertaining to the entire range or the entire mapped area of our sample. What we're going to do is we're going to right-click. And we're going to right-click on volume first. And we're going to choose external sources. Now, as Roku just alluded to, you can take velocity and you can use that as a modulator. So let's just explain that really quick, okay? Most people can wrap their minds around an LFO being a modulator because they can see the shape, right? And they can understand that, okay, this sinusoidal shape, this very circular kind of round, smooth shape, a sine wave, is going to make the volume louder and quieter and louder and quieter, or it's going to make the pitch go up and the pitch go down and the pitch go up and the pitch go down. It's going to follow this shape so they can wrap their minds around because it's a pretty visual thing. All that is, okay, all that is mapping a change in value across a range of potential values. Okay, and there's 128 total positions in that range. Total count 128. The same of keys on the keyboard. The same, the same of everything in the world of MIDI. In other words, there's 128 values or positions for velocity, for pitch, for volume, and we operate within that same range for basically everything in the world of MIDI. So what this does is it says, based upon the velocity value being sent from your controller, or the MIDI notes in your piano roll, okay, same, they will dictate the outcome of something. So if I put volume on, or if I put velocity controlling the volume, then that's what's going to happen. If I play a very low note, it's going to play a very low in volume note. And if I play if the velocity is mapped all the way up and I hit a very strong note, high velocity note, it's going to trigger a very loud note, right? So that right there can also be applied to pitch. It can be applied to pan position. It can be applied to your wet-dry balance on an effect like delay or reverb or saturation or pretty much anything. Okay, now the next thing said is very much common sense for a lot of people, but this is a mind blower for a lot of people too. So just like that, just like velocity is mapped from 0 to 127 or 1 to 128. There's also these keys on your keyboard. Each one is programmed. It's called key scale. Okay, you're basically saying that each key is triggering a different pitch value. Okay, so this is basically just saying that our keys on our keyboard have been mapped to pitch, just like velocity has been mapped to volume. And once you start to understand these basic ones, it's easier for you to wrap your mind around the bigger ones. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say our external modulation source here, it's not key position and it's not velocity. It's actually going to be a random thing. Okay, and we're going to choose random bipolar, which means it's random in both directions from wherever your knob is currently set. So if your knob is currently set at high noon and you choose to set a random bipolar trigger controller on it, it means that each time you press a key, it's going to be either above or below that middle point, most likely. So that's what I'm going to do, random bipolar. And right here, we get to see the modulation depth. And by default, it's a lot. So I'm going to press this a few times. So it's very random. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this down, and let's say it's more like 10% or so. So now there's only a 10% range of fluctuation possible in volume. Maybe I'll up that to like 15%. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the tuning. I'm going to right click, external source, random bipolar. And random bipolar, let's see here, where's my tune? Bipolar, pitch. Currently it is set to 2 semitones, which sounds like this, which is too much. So we're going to bring this down. This is probably better done with a different sample than a snare, but hopefully you guys are getting it. So the more things that we are assigning a sense of randomness to on each one of these basic parameters, it's affecting our perception of whether or not that is indeed the same sound being served up. And your goal is to try to get it to the point where it sounds pretty natural. And it is kind of hard to discern whether or not we're talking about different samples or the manipulation of one sample. If we were to run in a slightly different mode here, and just cancel out of my notifications here. So I just switched this to Time Machine 2, which now allows me to change transient size as well. So, oh, I can't do that with a random. I thought I could. Maybe it's a different one. Let's find out. Nope. Nope. Wow, that thing sounds crazy. All right, well, I think I was spoken crack. I don't think that I can affect transient size with a random trigger. So disregard that statement. So you can get like pseudo round robin stuff set up. It'll work better with some sounds than others. Now, there's also a way to get a true round robin, which means you're going to put a whole bunch of sounds into one section. So let's just do that really quick. We're going to grab, let's go snares this time, and we're just going to grab a few. And we have not listed these. Hopefully they're different enough. So we're going to put them all on C2. And they're now all mapped here. So one way you can achieve it is by turning off velocity control, basically, mapping them across velocity, and then randomizing the velocity value in your piano roll. That's one way. Another way is to set them all up with the same exact mapping. And the easiest way to do that is I use this kind of offset trick so I can see everything. I will explain myself here. So what I do is I just kind of find a way for me to be able to see all of my samples. And I work my way out. So basically what I'm doing is I'm setting up all of my samples. There's also another manual way you can do this. I'll show you that in just a moment, because there's also these numerical values in these different fields that you can just use to set all of your ranges for everything. But basically, if you're just wanting to do like a visual workflow for all of this, you would do something like this until everything was on this one grid, right? And you just wanted all of your sounds on this one key. All right, cool. So now as I play, it plays all of them. And then I have to go into my group editor. I think I have to go directly into my group editor anyway. It's been a minute. So let's highlight all of these. And we're going to go into group editor. And then we're going to say, voice groups, da, 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 da. Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually in my mapping editor. Oh, you know what? I'm not seeing it. All right, let's see if maybe it's in the script editor really quick. Preset, factory, randomize and change, sequencing, retrigger, session reorder. Why am I not finding this? Okay, we're going to come back to this in a minute and see if my brain, unless someone wants to remind me how this is done. Hey, okay, so now Roku is explaining how if you are starting from single sounds, you can bounce out multiple versions and start layering up your stuff inside of your map. Huh. Yeah, Roku is absolutely correct. The coding capabilities of the scripting engine are not for the average user. Maybe for like 1% of average users, maybe. I'm going to come back to the round robin thing and see if my brain joggles that loose while we're talking about other things. You know, there is like no end to freaking coolness that comes out of the mixing of making music and programming. It is just, I can't think of another like artistic medium that rewards people for programming and creating. It's just unbelievable to me. Okay, so there's this really wonderful company called Twisted Tools. It's made by a bunch of heroes, basically. Let's see here. Who's in this collective? We've got Antonio Blanco. We've got Richard Devine. We've got oh, why am I spacing his name? Here, let's pull up the website really quick. You'll recognize some of the tools probably. And if you are a complete owner from Native Instruments, a couple of their tools are actually inside. It's not just Polyplex. But I fully endorse everything that they've ever made. S-Layer is one of my favorites, and we've looked at that before. We can look at it again. Just know that S-Layer and Polyplex, there's actually a ton of crossover. So I know a lot of people that are like, oh, well, I have Polyplex, but I'm like saving up to get S-Layer because it doesn't come with the Native Instrument stuff. Well, you don't really need to. There's a whole bunch of crossover. You just have to dig a little bit to find the different tools in these different tabs, but they're here and you can use them if you already have complete. And this will change your layering game in profound ways. The very first thing you need to do is move away from their sounds, really. That's really the key. So by default, you get a whole bunch of really cool sounds like this. And then there's this dice bar underneath it, which is actually randomization. But before you start clicking around in randomization, it's important to understand why you have this big bar for randomization instead of just a button. And the reason is because this is like a touch sensitive bar. On the right is the full modulation range, or the full range of potential. To the left is just barely even touching it. So think of this as like 1 to 10% randomization, and this is like 90 to 100% randomization. So the further to the right you click, the greater probability of complete difference. Okay, so if I click just very close to the left here, but if I click all the way over to the right, so your mind quickly goes in a million different directions as far as like what is happening here, what could be happening here. What is happening here is that there are a total of 4 samples being served up for each trigger. For each sound triggered, it is a combination of 4 different sounds, the potential of 4 different sounds. And it's up to you what sounds are being triggered. And it goes like this. Each type of sound falls into a category, right? Kick, snare clap, hi-hat, cymbal or perk, tom or perk, one shot, or a blank user slot, which is like supposed to be customizable. But you can put whatever you want into those. There are subtypes: acoustic, analog, digital, sub, or any of those. Okay. So there are types and there are subtypes. I'm just going to show you something though. If you click this tiny little, it looks like a waveform. We've looked at this before in several other tools together. This is called the sample map. And if you click on this tiny little disclosure triangle, it looks like absolutely nothing here. But this is where all of those different libraries, those different sample libraries are hidden, are different sample maps. So here's a sample map for just kicks. There's 128 potential samples in that one sample map, that one library. Then there's snare and clap. Same, 128 more spots for samples. There's 128 more spots in hi-hats and so on and so forth, right? Let's just fill up the user one, knowing that you can mix and match across a crazy number of sounds. They do not need to be kick. You could put in bird chirps instead of kicks, right? It doesn't have to be a snare and a clap. It could be matchbox cars being thrown against cement walls. for all I care, right? Just like organize your sounds in some way that gives you some insight as to what the outcome might be if you do select a sound from that category. That's it. This is where the round robin thing starts to get easier and easier and easier. The more modern the tool, the more in that direction we're going, and the easier it becomes also for layering and discovery. I'm going to fill up this user spot just as an example here. So inside this sample bank, this sample map, we're going to put in a bunch of sounds. And actually, I just put, this might be kind of crazy. I'm actually in the middle of working on a bunch of UI sounds. We could just put a bunch of button clicks in here. That'd be pretty interesting. Or we could go into our found sounds. Let's do that. Found sounds. OhmLab. Let's play with the sounds that you guys are playing with this month. Found sounds for beat makers. There's 50 of these. So I'm actually going to go find more. So I'm going to put these on the first 50 slots. And then, oh, put these all the way to the left here. And then I'm going to, let's get trinkets too. Let's do trinkets. So we're going to put these other samples in. Probably more like that. 86. We have, yeah, we have about that many left. All right, so let's just go over here. I'll put those right here. Okay, so I filled up my whole sample map, basically, with these sounds. So now, in each one of these, it's going to play one of those. This channel right here is set up to mono. I'm going to set that to stereo. We have a crazy range here, 0 to 127. That's this. This is the range. So this top row right here is only grabbing from within this many of the samples, and the next one is grabbing from within this many of the samples, and so on and so forth. So there's a great opportunity for complete discovery here. And we can also affect pitch, and these things can be randomized as well. And this is our volume mix, so it's going to be dominant. Whatever sound is played from here is going to be dominant over the others. We can randomize that as well. I'm just going to start playing some notes. Now, if I click random here, it's going to randomize all of our stuff, but just a little bit. Maybe we'll go halfway. Right? It almost becomes unfair just how easy it is to start to get some pretty cool things out of here. And then you would use this as you would any other tool, right? You have less lanes to trigger with, but it's just like playing with, you know, like some drum pads or something. How many people out there do have Polyplex right now? Ooh, what is this? Keep your eye on sound pain from ADO. I have some hope. Yeah, no, I believe you. I believe you are correct, Subvids. I was looking at it, and I love everything that Sound Iron, ADO, and Tone Hammer have ever done. And I think that they will emerge as a massive competitor. I think that Falcon from UVI is also a massive step forward in a lot of ways. Yeah, kontakt still kind of continues to be the de facto standard, but only because the companies that are building tools for it, right, or instruments for it, are so tethered to it, right? I think if they updated the UI for kontakt, they added wavetable support in this last update, and that was big. So they have been working on stuff. I've been really surprised for quite a while that their UI hasn't been touched, but I think that there's just some massive thing in the pipeline, because that's what it feels like to me. Having worked with NI for many years on many projects, it feels like there is something that was probably supposed to be done a while ago, to be fair, and it hasn't been completed. And maybe that's why we all feel like there's such a lag here. I just don't believe that there is that much of a gap in their understanding of the space. I think that they are trying to get whatever it is perfect. IDM glitch porn. Yeah. How do you get the sample window up? Sorry, I missed that. Oh, that is right here. It's this tiny little sample map button. It's very easy to miss. And then make sure that you're in the directory that you want to be in, because there's like 8 different sample maps here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 different sample maps here. So what is that? 128 times 8. It's a lot of different samples that you can put inside of this thing. And I don't think it was Polyplex. I think I used S-Layer. But in the making of trinkets, I used Twisted Tool stuff. I believe it was S-Layer that I used for that specifically. But you could do that here as well. All right. So as far as getting into different parts of this tool here, let's close out of this for right now, and let's start. Before we get into the effects, I just want to show you the power of keeping in one spot here, like this sound, and then starting to play around with the maybe not necessarily start positions of all these sounds, with because they're all pretty short, but the pitch maybe, and the sample select. Okay, so obviously this, we have not initiated this preset or initialized this preset, so we can hear this pitch bend. So this is akin to going in and changing a couple of parameters in a preset, really. This is a preset too. And the thing that makes them presets are these other guys. Okay, so here's the main window, which shows you all of your sample select stuff. But there's also the envelope, like your attack, decay, release, that type of thing. And there's also an EQ. But there's also these global effects, like compressor and reverb. There's also a send effects, and it doesn't have to be delay and reverb on these guys. We could change them to anything, including a frequency shifter and a stretcher. So if we go back now, those same modulation edits and everything that were in there in that preset are still here. oh, there's just some really awesome stuff that you can get in here. Like, we are transforming our sounds in fairly unbelievable ways, really. Let's do one more example really quick. A little FMAM. That's nice right there. Yeah, so it's just super fun and easy to start getting more types of stuff out of this really, really quickly. And spending some time going in and learning how to automate and modulate things with different, LFOs or envelopes, and really starting to make them rather unique, bringing in multiple banks of samples and filling out these different type banks through your sample map. Like, this will pay dividends for years and years and years to come. Like, a tool like this, if you were to sit down for like a weekend or maybe even as much as a week and do nothing but just play with different samples, you would probably end up with enough like ammunition to build your own lifelong sample library. Like, it would take you so long to find uses for all of these different things. And in the process, you would become just so intimately aware of the capabilities of a tool like this. There are limitations to it, just like there are any other tool. But as far as something that can shave off a ton of time, as well as provide access to discovery and inspiration and randomization in ways that you don't normally get to engage with those things. Like, it's another one of those kind of game over type tools. And there's a lot of these. Like, Polyplex is just one. The only reason I showed this one over others is because a lot of people have Ultimate out there, or Complete out there, I mean, from Native Instruments. So, and I think Polyplex is included in like most packages now, if I'm correct. Yeah, Break Tweaker is absolutely has 4 layers per trigger, just like this. Each one can be a separate source, like this, whether a synth, sample, or noise, exactly. Also, the micro splicing and the ability to create exponential curves. Dude, seriously, it is so good. So good. Now, if you really want to start going down the rabbit hole, S layer takes this to a slightly better layer or level as far as sound design goes. If you're a Logic person, you've got Alchemy, which also provides you that same thing, 4 sources, and the ability to just go in any number of directions. They've got the mod curves and whatnot. It is so good. Yeah, DJ named Terry, absolutely. This plug is immense. It really is good. And the more times you come back to it and use it, the more you discover in it, because not everything is absolute surface level. And it takes you a little bit to start to really not necessarily like understand all the different things, but remember that all those different things can be used, and like find different ways to use them. Like, for instance, just the power of enabling randomization on pitch and samples and volume, but not pan and start. These give you highly stable sounds, right? These are percussive sounds, so you probably don't want to be messing with the start position too much. The pan position, you see, you don't really want to get those too far out to the sides by default, right? But what if you start to kind of flip the script on these things? And what if you do allow for some randomization of start position, but just a small amount? So some of these sounds start to get a little soft and fuzzy. And what if we do allow like full randomization of the entire spectrum, the stereo spectrum? What starts to happen, right? When you start putting things like textile movements, footsteps, like metal or chains or something like that, vocalizations like effort sounds, like like that, just tiny little sounds like that, and you start hitting random, you start getting highly complex different like character movements and stuff for video game engines. Like the use cases for this type of thing is completely wide open. All you have to really do is disregard the names of the categories that they've given to each one of these sample maps, right? And just allow your mind to start to work differently. One thing that you can do to help you get started with this new approach of working and layering with sounds is to think about these as in regards to parts of the frequency range. Okay, so maybe the first two are low, and the next two are mid-low, and the next two are mids, and then mid-highs, and then highs, right? So like you're thinking about things in frequency. Okay, another way you could do it is think about them in duration. Maybe the first two categories are really, really short, right? And the last ones are like maybe 2 seconds long or something, right? So maybe they're more like ambience or noise or something like that that you wouldn't mind cutting off manually, right? To shape your sound, excuse me, just the way that you want it. So there's lots and lots of different ways in which you can start to approach this mentally, like how you're going to categorize stuff. But this is a pretty massive tool. Sending in the course of a sample trigger seems like a recipe for problems. That's a merit. He's going to go through all of his sounds. Oh, that's awesome. Paul just got Liv digging into Polyplex on her stream. That's awesome. Yeah, overlapping in Polyplex is amazing. And you've really got to dig into these other things too. You've got to dig into the envelopes and the EQs, and then the global effects, and understand that you can actually take and bring in some of the send effects out of these main effects. So you can start getting pretty darn complex and interesting things. Let's set noise generator. Let's just set these things up here really quick as a quick example. Oh, let's go back and fix the pan position stuff. I'm going to wrangle these in again so they're not overly wide like this. Hey, you're not supposed to be doing that whole thing. You're supposed to be within here, right? There we go. Okay, now we saw before that there was a modulation here on this one because we started with a preset, Gorley Glide. If you look very closely at the pitch window here, while I'm triggering up here, keep your eye down here. It's actively modulating the pitch position of all these. Let's change all these. And let's change these. We're going to set these to 64. We'll set these to like 20 something. So I'm just setting up a custom range of samples that this thing can draw from. So that way we start to get different banks for each one of these slots. Oh, wow, that one's got a long one. Whoa. Wow. So yeah, a really fun way to play with something like this initially would be to maybe bring in all of the found sounds for beat makers and put them, fill up your sample map in the user bank. And then in the kick bank, take out all of theirs and just put in all of your favorite kicks, right? And then in the snare bank, put in all of your favorite snares, get rid of all of theirs, right? And just start playing with these things. Once you set this up and you think you have it in a place that you're liking it, you can save a copy of this entire ensemble. In fact, when you first open it, you can save a copy of the ensemble in a different folder and just call it like testing or something, right? So you don't have to worry about breaking anything. Yeah, it's a really cool sampler. Yeah, okay, so Roku brings up a really cool one. Some functions of Polyplex work the same in the Bitwig sampler, like randomizing the start position over time. Absolutely. Which you can also do in a couple of modes inside of Kontakt, but not the rest of the modes. Roku says, it's how I create mini drones. I see a massive use for me in Polyplex. Yeah, it's a really, really neat thing. And it works with long form sounds as well, obviously. And like I said, it's like a sibling of S layer. So if you're digging Polyplex, S layer is also super freaking rad. This is turning into a reactor stream all of a sudden. We'll get back to drums in a sec. This is pertinent for those who are wanting to do more layering and stuff. Sorry, I always have such a hard time speaking and navigating. There we go. All right, so S layer looks a lot like Polyplex. Got its sample banks. It's just got the one. So the thing that Polyplex has is the 8 different banks and the ability to cross-pollinate and commingle those banks amongst one another, right? You have the modulation sources down here, LFO and envelope. This is where things get quite a bit more complex for S layer. For modulation, you've got wrappers and sequencers. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 samples playing simultaneously, if that is indeed what you want. So apples to apples, if we were to take those things out, let's just take all of these. And we'll put in all of our found sounds. So these are the, oh, these are trinkets. Found sounds for beat makers. And then I'm just going to bring in a couple of like kicks and stuff, I think, to make this a bit more real. Here, we'll bring in some of these. We'll bring in some kicks. And we'll bring in some snares and claps. And let's bring in some perks. I'll just spread these out on those last few keys there. Cool. All right, so now whoo. Ooh. Yeah, you just start to get into these really awesome sounds, and I just find myself going down a rabbit hole every single time I start playing with these things. Awesome. It's just awesome. There's no other word for it. It's just awesome. LFO wave shaping and FX as well, very useful. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Here's a free drum sampler, if by any chance you've not got one. Oh, let's see what Subvids is sharing here. Satala. It's got the Ableton look. This is pretty cool. Oh, it's very simple. I like the drag and drop. I like. Huh. Very cool. Might have to check this out. Hey, Iron Imp is here. Yeah, I love Twisted Tools reactor stuff. Absolutely. The start time offset, that's also an old school tracker time stretch trick, and a whole line of triggers to a sound, and then each step advance their start offset by, yep. The electron range. They present more as XOX style roll-in step sequence on the surface, but between sample preset replacement per step as well as parameter locking, they have a lot of the flexibility of trackers like Renoise. Yeah, for sure. Who needs more drums than an 808? It's a loaded question, Roku. Yes, I have tried Flush as a sampler. We can look at that in just a sec as well. It's we're just living in an age, you know what I mean? And these tools have been out for a while now, like by today's standards. That's a good sound. Ooh, whoa. Hold on a second. Yeah. So good. All right. Where were we? Flush. Realtor. Oh. Yeah, Falcon is ace. We should definitely dive into some Falcon stuff together when we get deeper into the sampling stuff. There's just so many good things out there. There are so many good things out there. Don't you just love playing in Realtor? Oh man. Okay, so there was a mention of Flesh. So this requires a little bit of an explanation. There's a brilliant mind, Tim Exile, who makes wild and crazy fun performance-minded tools. And he's got a couple, Flush and Form, Flush and the Finger in the Mouth, right? Aren't those all his? Pretty sure they are. So these are pretty interesting tools here. Since this one is so much more like sequence based, let's dip into the other ones first really quick, because there is sorry, that's a little distracting. There is some stuff that we can play with the mouth. Okay, I've lost track of which one is which. Hold on a second. Oh, right. Okay, so it's actually the finger. So the mouth does some stuff too, but it's very much it's meant to be a different type of tool altogether. Okay, so really cool thing about this guy. Let's bring in. Where were we? We were just Kit Diver. Can we do this now? I don't know if we can do this now. Oh, yes, we can. They just weren't linked. So here's another thing that I like doing. I will take the finger, which is a Tim Exile product that runs inside of Reaktor, and I'll sidechain in something like S-Layer. So now this audio from S-Layer is being processed again by the finger, and you end up with these really cool little bits. Let's we come back up here, and it keeps the setting down here. Oops, I got to turn off my record for that. Okay, cool. So now I can change the sound up here. Can also go to our, this is our polyplex. Oh, that sounds dope. I'm just going to sprinkle in the user folder for a few things here and there. So this is sprinkling in sounds from, this is sprinkling sounds in from, oops, found sounds for beat makers and trinkets. Okay, so again, this sound is being fed through the finger. And what the finger does is it kind of automates different configurations of like filtering, envelope modulation that's being applied to that filtering, and resonance, or some stuttering, or various little tweaks and modifiers, if you will. So it's a way to take an already kind of layered and reimagined version of multiple sounds of yours, and then kind of bringing them together through another shared process. Man, this is why I'm so excited to see what you guys end up doing with sound packs every single month, because we have so many tools out there. You know what I mean? It's just great. Some electron chatter is starting up. Mm-hmm. Just getting caught up with the chat here. Yeah, Iron Imp. That's kind of why I like it. It gives me really fast access to things that, number one, would take a moment to like stop and like, you know, write some automation in, or like map stuff over to knobs or whatever to like start twisting these things in real time together. So it saves all of that time, and it gives me the ability to go through them so quickly. In the amount of time that it would have taken me to build one of them, I could probably audition 30 or more of them, which gets me to where I want to be really quickly, which is freaking rad. Sometimes I can't even believe how like silly simple some of these workflows end up being. They seem so complex when you're trying to wrap your mind around them, but it is so worth taking the time to do that. It is so worth to get all the routing right, and hook up a few of these tools together. It being a reactor, you can actually do a lot of that in the environment window of reactor, which just takes these things to an even more ridiculous state of awesome. So, yes, yes, Saf, for sure. Um, oh, is the finger just in everything now? Just in reactor, period? That is a great choice. I'm glad they did that. Yeah, just experimenting with the finger and side chaining, very cool. Love it, says Samaritan. Absolutely. And like there's no end to what you could do. Like you can run anything you want through this. Like think about just starting with like a track that you all know, right? Like I don't know, freaking Alvin and the Chipmunks or something, right? Just toss something in there and then just start playing around with things until you start to get a sense of what's happening. And then before you start sending your own stuff through it, start to play around with these things. These are velocity modifiers. Okay, so when you start to bring these up or down, these knobs up or down, it's going to either in a positive or negative direction affect these processes, the frequency cutoff, the envelope time, and the amount of said modulation throughput. That's all going to be affected by the velocity. And then also, simultaneously, you can also have mod wheel influence up here. So there's these two knobs up here. So you can get more real time control over the manipulation of those things based upon mod wheel and velocity. And the reason why that becomes so very important in all of this is that the keys on your keyboard, when you are in fact triggering the finger, it's triggering different presets with the different keys on your keyboard. Okay, so you dial in the preset that you like for the key on your keyboard that you like. And then you press that key on your keyboard to get that effect, like a low pass filter or a high pass filter or a boost or a cut or whatever. And then you're using your mod wheel and velocity control to kind of push it in more extreme or less extreme directions in real time. So your MIDI keyboard becomes kind of a remix performance tool for whatever is being run through the finger. That's the long and the short of it. So it's a MIDI effects kind of performance tool. Sup, Vids? Take care, brother. once upon a time, Tim Exile had formed kind of a super band for native instruments, and we, for quite a while, thought that this was actually going to be the thing that they were moving forward with for everything as they announced it, and it did not last that long. And for this one brilliant year or so, these guys went around the world on their product tours, and it was great because they were the people leading these like real world sessions where you would go into like music stores and whatnot and learn about the new native instrument stuff. And they were still very much the bee's knees in the industry at that point in time. It was really awesome, actually, these guys and what they were getting up to. It was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Oh man. C4 is your favorite right now, huh? Oh, that's this one. Iron M says, I don't know who I'm stealing this phrase from, but someone said, glitch it to digital. What glitch is to digital, what scratching is to analog. Really like that comparison. Yeah. Yep. For sure. Paul, you have the finger. Rejoice. It's really cool. Yeah, I like that. You know, there's a lot of things that are so flippin' cool about the Electron universe. There's so many awesome things. All right, where were we? Where were we? I feel like we have gone off the rails. Let's dip back into this and see where we were. We're supposed to be in week 5. We're in week 5. Hey, how about that? All right, so we're talking drums. Kontakt and synth style samplers we've talked about. Battery and drum machine style samplers we've talked about. Polyplex and hybrid models we got stuck on. A machine and similar MIDI controllers versus the MPC. I don't know if we actually need to go through this. When I wrote this curriculum several years ago, this was still a thing, and machine had already been out on the scene for several years, and it was still a conversation to be had. There are still conversations to be had about controllers. It's just that it's less important now. I mean, honestly, like if you're using live, there's a conversation to be had about the push, right? Because push 2 made it pretty legitimate. If you're using NI, there's a conversation to be had about the upsides of machine, right? It really comes back to integration with the other tool sets that you're using first, I think. And then the other is, are you using this for actual performance? Because if you are, then anything performance related should trump any other concern, in my opinion, because it's hard enough to get your ideas out in front of people and out into the world in a way that's really similar or close to what you actually want it to be. It's already hard enough. So whatever you can do to prioritize that over anything else, I think. Building kits and sound selection. Okay. Hey, Evans the Bard, you're here. How are you? Happy Monday. Ooh, electrons are a little expensive for me at the moment, unless I sell my Korg MS2000 at Dave Smith. Dude, come on now. Come on now. Don't do that. Getting your homework for the week. Nice. Dust Collection 101. Oh, Iron Imp says, I've always been more of a knob twiddler than a velocity finger drummer, so I don't have a ton of input on this one, but they're really cool. Yeah, if you like what you have, why go Electron? That is what I would ask. Another thing I would say is I tend to agree with Iron Imp on that one, and that might sound a little odd, me being a drummer, but when it comes to like digital devices, I've always been more of a knob turner. than a pad smasher, which seems counterintuitive, but it is. Roku says, don't sell analog synths. Every single person I know who sold one regretted it. I've sold a bunch in the last couple of moves. I've also sold a couple of drum kits and a couple of electronic drum kits. And yeah, I miss them, but at the same time, I wouldn't be playing them right now, and I'm glad that someone else is, to be perfectly honest. Especially my Mapex kit. It would just murder me on the inside every day, not knowing, or like not playing it. Like if I was letting it sit in a freaking garage or something, that'd be terrible. It'd be just terrible. Okay, now, yes, now the new Electron Studio with the Overbridge technology, knowing that they can update that over the years to come, yes. That is a very tempting carrot right there. Evan says, all of this is such good info for me since I'm always pushing the line between composing and live performance. Yeah. All of this stuff is so pertinent. The other thing, you know, a lot of people are talking about how hard of a delineation point there is between like studio time and performance time, and yet we're constantly talking about how the lines between sample and synth have been blurred, the lines between everything, all the genres and subgenres, everything is being blurred. And I argue that there is no line between the studio and performance. It's just a matter of whether that mic is hot or not. You know what I mean? Like the more performance oriented you are in the studio, the more organic your output is. It's good to play with these kinds of things to see what comes out. We all know that live music is the best music, and it's not just because of the people in the room. I think it's also because we're kind of forced to maintain continuity in our exploration. And when we do that, we end up in cool places. And there are simply witnesses there. If we were doing the same thing in our room, we'd still get to those same places. There just wouldn't be as many ooh and ah moments shared with other people, I think. All right, so using found sounds. So we talked a little bit about how to use found sounds when we were talking about layering stuff, right? But what else can you do with these samples that are in this free sound pack this month? Well, one thing you could do is just bring it into a sampler and not worry about making a kit out of it. So all of this talk about drum kits and drum design and stuff, it kind of puts us in a certain kind of mindset, and it can be really limiting. So I think it's also worth just remembering that you can take full advantage of like almost godlike powers with a basic sampler these days. If you're lucky enough to have a really advanced and fancy sampler like Alchemy, then man, there's just no limit. Let's just take one of these things. I don't even know which one. Let's just take this one. It's like this very plain machine sound. So I'm just going to bring this in and we'll do this granular inside of Alchemy. And the only thing I'm going to try to do with this is find a sound that's cool enough to make me kind of sit up straight and go, ooh, like that's inspiration. I kind of like up here. Let's get in here and ooh, I kind of like this right here. I'm going to give this some width by randomizing the pan position of those grains. Yeah. Let's give this a little space, shall we? Something simple. Actually, you know what? I don't even want an effect inside there. I want to go directly out. And let's do replica. I'm already starting to get kind of inspired here. Well, I think I've already found inspiration from this pack, which is pretty nice. Didn't I just have a window open for those? And I find myself doing this all the time. I will reach for a sound where I'm like, all right, I'm going to start with a beat, or I'm going to start to find something to build up a beat around. So I'm going to reach for these like kind of percussive sounds, and then I end up ultimately stretching those and manipulating those to kind of build some sort of a mood or some sort of a vibe, and then start putting stuff in around it. So this whole concept of like, okay, well, we're going to talk about drums and drum kits, and that means that you're going to have to build up like these drum kits as what you're building is not necessarily always the best direction to go, because it kind of hamstrings you. It puts you into this corner of like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now. I'm working on this kit. When in reality, you should feel free to follow your inspiration at any point in time, right? So I personally, there are times where I will build some of those kits, and that's totally fine. And there are other times where I'm going to take individual sounds and I'm just going to play. I want to explore the texture and the tonality and the timbre, like the behavior, when things are being like processed in different ways. And when I like something, I will oftentimes stop for a second and explore with like maybe one more process and then bounce out variations of those, or copy that down to a new track, right? And mute it so it's there for later. And then that way I have these variations and options that I can kind of toggle between as I'm exploring these different ideas, as I'm like writing out arrangements and stuff. So, and other times I like to be very, very random in how all of this is done. So, Ibrahim, welcome in. Good to have you here. Hey, STP1 is here. Iron Imp says, I feel a good question for music gear is, am I collecting this because I love it and wanted to own it, or am I getting it to get it to, or to get to a place as a tool? That's not always an easy question. Absolutely. Oftentimes the answer is, well, I think if I have it, I might start doing this. That just means you want to. Roku says, I perform my production when I do my ambient music. There's no line there. Yeah, I like that. Evan says, I've been thinking about how to take what I do here on Twitch out on stage in Portland. You know what, dude, seriously? I mean, you know Portland as well as I do. If you were to set some freaking cameras and lights up in front of that stage and they knew that you were live broadcasting, it almost wouldn't matter what you were doing. You just have to put up a little disclaimer as people walked in the door that this whole thing is being live broadcast or whatever. And you know, Portland. It would totally work. Future Santa London might have been a bit ahead of the time doing the video concert, but nowadays Twitch is full of cool studio jams and shows. Yeah, you know, there was a period of time where I thought, and this was like back around 2000, that it was finally the era of the VJ and that we were going to be moving way more into multimedia production in live settings than we are now. Like, I really thought that we were getting to this point. It all signs pointed to that. And I'm really surprised that it hasn't stalled. It's just, it hasn't progressed in some realms, in some arenas. It just has not moved at all, like not even a little bit. Kind of like AR and VR in a way. Ooh. Oh, Saf is throwing a tough one out here. He says, I think recorded music is better than live shows, but that's my opinion because I like personal experiences. Samarit says, oh, Pink Floyd live. I don't know. Love watching Pink Floyd play their lap steel guitar, right? Grateful Dead. That's all I have to say. Well, and all the other greats that are considered the great jam bands. I can't get enough of the concerts, so I'll definitely wholeheartedly disagree there. STP1 says there's so much we can do with just one sound in creative sound design. It's a fun challenge. Absolutely. Ooh, now that is a brain tingler. What if you listen to the recorded band on headphones while at the show? Whoa. Whoa. Yeah, that would be... Yeah, I want to go for the feels. I want to go to see. Personally, honestly, the only thing that matters to me, the only thing that really matters to me in a live show is everything they're doing, what they're doing. Like, I just want to know that that's them doing their thing, and I will be entertained because I don't care if people screw up or explore in directions that I don't necessarily appreciate in the moment or whatever. I just want to know where they go. Like, it's all about the connection to the other person, to me personally. I love knowing how other brains work, and I am continually floored by the fact that everyone goes in opposite directions than I would go in, and I love it. Yeah. Evans the Bard says, I can so easily spend all of my free time creating new sounds and instruments this way. Same. I know. I'm getting really old and I still can't believe I get to play like this, right? People just pay money for noise constantly. Iron M says, practically speaking, I feel like drums can categorically be thought of drum, snare, that kind of low, mid, high. You can add a lot of found sounds and Foley on top for interest, which are fantastic rhythmic texture, but it's helpful to have a certain sound as those three anchors. Yes. Evan says, I was bummed that I couldn't hang out on your stream earlier. Oh, man. Not a hard and fast rule, but it's how I've found it a useful way to think about things. Yeah. So to me, it all comes down to what inspires you, because what inspires you informs not just what you create, but how you create it and how you deliver it. And that in turn controls very much how everyone else ingests it. Because what Foss is going to do with the sample is totally different than what Indremia is going to do, and it's totally different than what Iron Imp is going to do, and it's also totally different than what Evans is going to do, and I love that. I just absolutely love that. I want to know that Foss is going to take something to this place of noise and texture, and then layer something with it. And then I love that Indremia is going to take just a millisecond of that sound and maybe layer something with it, or maybe just roll with that millisecond. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me to know how everyone is going to do it. So I love it when people have like built a system where they're like, here's my holy trinity of drum sounds, and then I build out around that. And that's like the secure footing that they need to have like their recipes work. Yeah, I freaking love it. Yeah, and Dremia, I like all of the visuals that you've made. If they were somehow responsive, dude, seriously. Evan says, I want to be able to use all the instruments I have. I need maybe a few more lifetimes. Yeah, I've put myself in quite the predicament here. I've created so many instruments over the years. Like it would take me lifetimes to play with my own stuff. It's just, it's really something. And I'm looking at my kid going down that same path right now. He is so enamored with, oh, that was a great sound. Now on to the next. Whoa. Paul says, speaking of virtual live shows, I hear performers who still do shows for tips on Second Life. Whoa. I did not know that. Wow. Wow. Iron M says, I like concerts for the reason that I don't have live theater groups visit my apartment with massive PAs, but I like my apartment for the opposite reasons. Yeah, for sure. Paul says, I am no longer interested in seeing any live show where a band basically plays their albums. Those have historically been the biggest letdown shows of my life. There are only a few that I can look at and say those were incredible shows and they played like album music. I remember a show in particular where The Cure and Depeche Mode mostly just played their albums and they were pretty darn great. I can't think of many. Like when I was really, really little, I went and I saw the Smothers Brothers at the State Fair, and I loved that everything was exactly the same as their album because I could sing along, and I was like 10 or 8 or something. And I'm like trying to do the yo-yo tricks with Yo-Yo Man as he's doing his thing. Everything else, like I do not like canned music. I don't listen to Top 40 radio. I don't listen to stuff on repeat. Yeah, I don't like going and watching an album. I never have. And part of it is like a resistance that I feel that's very deep rooted in my artist blood, which is just I do not want to play the same thing every single day. Period. I don't care if people like it. I don't want to play it every day. Oh, and Primal Scream, absolutely, yeah, right? Yeah, they've crushed at all ages. I don't know if they would crush right now, Foss, but they crushed then, didn't they? Cubase Pro 10 to compose and record cinematic music in real time. Boom. Evans, man, we have got to talk about Audio Design Desk. We've got to find some time. It is a rewarding journey. I was kid free up until later in life. I had a kid at a later age, and I'm liking the decision. I really am. There are parts where I'm like, oh boy, you know, my back just is absolutely killing me today. Sorry, kiddo, I can't do that with you. And that sucks. But most of the time I'm like, man, I am so glad that I was able to field that question in a responsible way, because had someone asked me that question when I was like 22 or 23, I don't think it would have been an appropriate answer to like tell a human and then have them go out and operate in the world with that information. So I am very, very grateful for a certain depth of wisdom at this point. He's doing just fine because of it, I think. Oh no! Paul just got an email from Modu, and his new interface is on hold for chip shortage. Oh, that sucks. Oh, that sucks, dude. Oh. Hey, Christoph from Ghost Hack is here. What's up, homie? How are you? Happy Monday. Welcome in. And yeah, Autechre has some wild rhythms indeed. Yo, what up, Cody Modi? Let's get back to some conversation about these drums, because we were just talking about taking right after the kits. We had the conversation about layering And we talked about, well, let's not talk about just kits. What about just treating sounds individually, finding inspiration, building, you know, texture and atmosphere or mood out of those things individually. And there's also the really old school approach of, I'll just talk about like all of this IDM and stuff in the chat. This is good timing. Let's go back to Reaktor again. This time what we're going to do is we're going to grab something really old, a really old ensemble. And before I do anything else, that usually means that we need to put a limiter on. So please do this. Please do this. Don't wreck yourself, because a lot of the old Reaktor stuff can be a bit fiddly. And what we're going to do is, let's just go into the library and where are we here? Oh, that's right. They're over here. All right. So in the original factory library, there are these groove boxes and samplers, and there are sequencers too. And some of these can actually be pretty darn cool. I'm going to grab, what's in number 2? Let's do grain states, maybe? Travelizer, maybe Travelizer. No. Hold that thought. We will find this. It is worth hanging in there. Let's go Crypt. Let's go with the original Crypt. So this is about as old as one of these ensembles gets. And you really do want to make sure that you've got like a limiter on here, and there will be some little pops and stuff in here, but don't freak out. We open up our sample map here, and just like the others, we can just highlight all and remove, and it'll say, are you sure you're about to lose 100 samples? And you say yes. And then you come over here to your found sounds for beat makers that you got this month. And you just drop them right in here. And you can start off with, you can start off with just these sounds. Oh, actually. Sorry. They're not dropping correctly. Let's try that again. There we go. All right, so here's all of our sounds. And I'm just going to hit play. And what this does, this grid right up here is the gate, basically. So every single time you see a little blip up in one of these lines, it's opening a gate to let a sound out. Over here, we've got our sampler controls. We've got sample select, pitch, speed, and grain. This is a very similar approach to what you saw with Polyplex and S-Layer. This is going to show you the track that is currently playing, but this guy up here and this guy down here are going to be changing very rapidly. So although it's showing you one file right here, you're going to be hearing a lot of sounds. This is working in a 64-step sequence, this says. It's operating in 16th notes currently. And we're just going to start hitting play, and I'm going to move around in all of this. And let's just take off this loop and see what we end up with. Pretty cool, all right. I'm going to start moving around. Okay, and now some of these are going to be really busy. Some of them will be more simple. These types of tools are a really fun way to put a whole bunch of sounds in and get something out kind of randomly. They're all based upon these preset patterns. So you can go in and you can kind of massage these patterns in whatever way that you want to. Sorry for the little reverb creep there. So it's just a fun way to get some inspiration, and it's also a fun way to just bounce a whole bunch of rhythmic elements that you can use in different ways. And then you can start to kind of play it in tandem with some more intentional stuff, right? Like what we were playing with before. If we were to take these 4 notes and actually put them on a grid, would we end up with anything kind of cool when played with some of these other things? Let's find out. Let's just go jam for a minute and see what happens. This one's kind of cool. So maybe we would want to change up the gotta love those feedback swells in there. All right, maybe we should change this up. We had 16th notes in there. What if we swing this and switch it to 24? I like that. All right, so then how do you actually get use out of this? Let's just do this really quick. I'm going to turn this off, bring my reverb back up, and we're going to talk about routing really quick. Instead of a stereo output here, we're going to send this to a bus. We'll just say bus 10 is what we're going to use. And then we're going to open up a new audio track in our project. We're going to set the input, we'll set that as stereo, we'll set the input to bus 10. So now this is a capture track. That's all this is. And we are now going to record this whole segment here. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I can't do that yet because I have to turn reaktor back on. All right, so let's do that. Turn this back on. and record. With really old ensembles like this, I will always record more than I need. You'll see that this first initialized beat here is just like super spiky, right? It just overwhelms. It's no good. So what we're going to do is we're going to find our beat. So for those of you following this workflow, you'll have an actual solution here. All right, so we've created a beat and we like it. And if we look here, we're going to see that this is off the grid. And this is not like uncommon for a reactor. We could just clean it up. All right, so we've got our beat and we can chop that to, you know, like 8 beats or 8 bars or whatever, that's what we want. Smart, absolute value. There we go. You give it a little fade curve in and out, and now you've actually got a beat. Like you've got some sort of a groove that you're building around, right? And it feels fairly organic. Right, and if you were to put like a little beat underneath it, like a little kick or something, it all starts to take form. So you know, when we're talking about like drums and kits, it's not just about building kits, it's about exploring individual sounds on their own. It's about building kits. It's about building kits in the different types of tools for the different types of output that you're looking for, right? We looked at kontakt, and there's a very specific kind of thing that we're going for with kontakt, right? If we're choosing that, it's oftentimes the multi-sample instrument, the control over groups, the access to the features that it offers. Battery is more closely aligned with the traditional drum pad interface that we're accustomed to from like the MPCs or you know, Push or Akai or Novation or whatever. There's Reaktor, which is where we started looking at the more modern range of tools that just kind of assume that you're here in the modern age and you're wanting to layer sounds together. So your percussive sounds are much more interesting and complex and unique, right? Because a lot of people are playing with samples. And one of the easiest ways to get something unique is to layer different samples together. And when you've got a bunch of them and you also start adding a process in there as well, like a granular stretch or a granular delay or anything like that, all of a sudden things transform tremendously. And now you're like a light year away from whoever else is using those same sounds. And then we also talked about variations on that same theme, right? Moving into tools like S-Layer for more sound design intensive purposes rather than kit building. And then we talked about augmenting or like kind of remixing with performance minded tools like the finger, where you're now using a range of presets that you can trigger with a MIDI keyboard to kind of augment the playback or delivery or character or whatever of each individual sound in your kit as it's playing. And then we talked about taking just an individual sound and putting it into a sampler. We didn't even talk about outputting that sound and stretching it or speeding it up or flipping it into reverse or any of the other 1,000,001 things that we could do with just an audio file in our arrangement window. And then we just talked about the kind of liberation that comes with putting sounds into a sequencer with a whole bunch of preset patterns, right? And just wiping out the sample map that they give you and plugging your own sounds in there. So this bounces back up against last week's lesson where we talked about the importance of presets, right? And what you could do with presets, and taking a look at the programming of other people's presets with your sounds or your wavetables or whatever. It's always beneficial to go through the rounds of options when you're going through all of these thoughts, because if you haven't really decided on a workflow, if you haven't really innovated something for yourself, the exposure to multiple ways of doing similar types of things is a really great way to start figuring out how to do that for yourself, right? You're going to figure out what kind of tool sets you gravitate toward, what kind of workflows you gravitate toward, what kind of output you gravitate toward, and all of those things kind of inform your next decision, right? So it's really just about having the opportunity to you need to provide this opportunity to yourself to actually look at these different types of tools and figure out, you know, to what degree could I demystify this without it interfering with my artistic flow, if you will. Right? Guys like Zamertz will always want to go down the rabbit hole of figuring out how something works when he discovers he has a certain kind of tool, right? Which is probably what leads to him being able to put so many complex and diverse sound types together in successful arrangements. And there will always be other people who are just very timid around those tools. And the goal here is to allow just a tiny little bit of that Zamertz through every single person in the room, in the chat room. So y'all can feel like you've at least had the chance to try this certain type of tool, right? You don't have to be a master. You should put it in front of yourself to try it, and you should be using presets and the things that they've put out there for you to try first. Just run your sounds through them. So then that way, these concepts that have been put up on display as presets, they become relevant to you, right? They're putting on display the capabilities of the tools. You just need to run your sounds through them, through those presets, to figure out if this is the kind of tool that's going to get you going in the direction that you ultimately want to be going. See what kind of questions we've got around all that, because that's a big dump of stuff, right? Hey, Kwame is here. What's up, homie? Evans, yeah, I never play the same thing almost. Yeah, I agree. That's definitely changed with a kiddo in the house. He likes to hear the same My Little Pony song like 40 or 50 times in a day. But when I am relinquished of his control, I do not. And yeah, we definitely got to carve out some time, look at Audio Design Desk together. What do people think of study streams? Would that detract from my channel? And Dremia, are you talking about sharing with others the time that you spend studying? I don't think that is a bad thing. I think if anything, it's going to keep your faithful loyals there to keep you company and probably get interested in whatever you're learning. What's up, Heidi? What's up, Christoph? Bigger brains. Yeah, there are so many crazy Reaktor plugins out there, right, Christoph? It's here for the old dads. Okay, so Spiral is a very cool factory MIDI generator, and you kind of have to connect Spiral to something else. So Spiral is just a sequencer, so you've got to connect it to a sound source. That's one thing that's become easier in the new Reaktor, and in the DAWs as they've supported, or as they've added support for MIDI and software channels, the same way that audio throughput was allowed. That used to be a trickier thing. Spiral is dope. give Spiral a shot. Brett Calmer, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, put together, or maybe 12 years ago, somewhere in there, put together a little video on how to put Spiral together with something else. I can't remember which one. New School, maybe. Yeah, Andremia, if so, okay, show of hands in the chat. Who would watch this? Andremia says, I would let my music play whilst I learn how to do stuff, experiment and fumble around, occasionally chat and stuff. Who would watch that? I would watch that. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good for the stream. I agree with Evans the Bard here. Iron Imp says, oh, Crypt, I fell in love with the effects section. I was really into chaos pads and made 4 serial XY controlled multi-effects with one XY to rule them all. And I made about 40 parameterized effects algos in Reaktor Primary and a bit of Core. Dude, Iron Imp, we've got to chat. We've got to chat at some point. I am going to be on the lookout for a couple of people. I'm just going to put this out there right now. Anyone deep into DSP, we will eventually start developing native plugs for the Audio Design Desk environment, and I would love to put stuff in front of friends and cohorts first. This also goes, there was a bit of conversation started in the public lounge over on the Discord, which is centering around blockchain and people that are comfortable developing with blockchain at this point. So definitely want to have a conversation with folks comfy in that space as well. Just putting that out there. So please do DM if you are interested. Yeah, 3D stuff, game engine stuff. Dude, Andremia, all it's going to do is attract more people that are a perfect demographic for you. Ambient airplane vibe. Wait, what are we talking about here, Paul? Hold on a second. I got to see what Paul just posted here. Is this just cabin noise? Just a Twitch stream of just cabin noise from different like trains and planes and automobiles. Yes. Iron Imp, yes. The example of these 4 tonal hits, or these 4 individual sound design hits, providing an anchor for the mind to listen to a scaffolding for Reaktor to freak out with a million timbers around it. Yeah, exactly. Evan says, this is sounding very familiar to what I was doing last Saturday. Man, it's taken me quite a while to catch up with this chat. You guys are freaking on it today. The off-grid hats create that Jay Dilla swing. Yeah. Indeed. Blackberry Jam, welcome in. They did collaborate with NI on that, right? Big brain status. Uh-oh. My life is a collection of rabbit holes, too. All right. I think that oh, hold on a second. I'd love to help it if you're on anti-aliasing, but I have some good ideas on how to improve it. Yeah. I mean, I'm all about finding the right people and giving an opportunity for growth to make it all like work long term, right? Nothing is the ultimate game changer in version 1. I just want to find the right people. Can't change people. I want good people. All right, anyway, we have covered a lot of ground. Did we miss anything? Did we miss anything? Shaping and layering percussive sounds, creating processing or creative processing and effects. Yeah, we could talk about that. Synthesizing percussive sounds. Oh yes, let's just, for just a couple of minutes, let's just talk about the wide world of synthesized percussive sounds and how to get started. I'm going to open up Serum for this. I think it's safe to say that it's probably the safest one to use here, as far as most people having it. All right, so percussive just means short and sharp, right? That's it. That's it. So percussive shape, done. All we did was we lowered the sustain level and the decay parameter. This is a percussive sound. I'm going to increase my release and my attack just a bit so we have no click. That is the percussive sound of the day. Seriously though, how do we make this into something useful? You can start with something really tonal like this. It is totally okay. If you want to go like noise, you don't have to go for a noise oscillator. You could get something really interesting in there if you really want. You can go for something kind of noisy looking, something kind of busy at some point, and FM with that into your main oscillator. We can add noise. That would be too easy. We'll come back to that. We're going to take this same envelope and we're going to use it to control our filter. We're going to take off that resonance. So now it's super clean. In fact, I might take the decay down just a touch more. There we go. That's good. All right, so let's distort this thing. And we don't have to use the distortion in your synth. Right? I know. We were just doing this in Alchemy and it turned out rather great, right? And all we had to do was put a little bit of replica on it. So I'm actually going to do that. We could go in here, right? And we could choose something really nasty and big, like maybe like diode 1. But we're not ever really going to get the kinds of like really high quality, juicy things that we want nowadays. So let's just go into something a bit more modern. Thermal. We could look at minimal next. What's it called? From minimal, Rift. You can get all weird and like comb filter like. Just kill your second delay, wherever that's coming from. Signfold. Where is it coming from? Or we can go into just the really extreme stuff. I actually kind of like this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bounce this. All right, And what we're going to do next is we're going to just print that. And then we're going to solo it. And we're going to cut it. And we're going to reverse that. I like this. All right, so we'll do this again. And we're doing that again. So now we can shrink it. Too much. Let's put a sample behind that. That's kind of an interesting one. Actually, I don't really like it shrunk. Let's do instead. Let's do it stretched. Yeah, something like that. All right, so a little region automation here, and we'll just put a little. All right, and let's just put a. We're just going to stack these and put one process on these. All right, so it's the same sound here. We're just going to put something to glue them together, like maybe a little bit of granular something. And oh, drums. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, anyway, basically just like your entry point into adding synthetic layers to drums doesn't have to be complex. Like the complexity and the delivery of your sound can absolutely come from your processing at first. You do not have to be some kind of like synth master to get these really cool, very hard to describe or quantify or categorize feels in your percussive sounds. A lot of people feel like those are those types of sounds that have like a tonal synthetic quality to them, but they're obviously like from a sample, that it's all from just processing that sample. And oftentimes it's just not the case. Oftentimes there's just a tiny little bit of tone in there from some synth. So they don't need to be complex processes to get started. We'll get into some more complex stuff in the coming weeks. All right, did we cover everything in here? The sizing percussive sounds. What is this message? Hold on. Hi-hats, can I show a hi-hat? Yeah, sure, I can show a hi-hat really quick. In fact, let's choose, oops, I want a synth. Let's do massive for this one. Let's do that. All right, so hi-hat noise, quickest way to a hi-hat. The decay parameter of your envelope kind of becomes the big important factor in a good successful hi-hat sound. You want it really tight, but not tight enough to click. You don't need any of your normal oscillators. You just need your noise oscillator. You're going to bring your color up. You don't necessarily need to hear it modulating through any of the brown noise. You want to keep it nice and bright. So we're just going to put your controlling envelope on the amplitude and hit a key. That's a soft, like super classic. We can dial in the decay for a tight hi-hat. Right? All we're doing is modulating the decay parameter to get there. If you're wanting to get away from the classic sound and into the more modern, tight, bright sound, you just switch to a bright white and instant hi-hat tick. So now it's right. So you're just playing with decay as the only parameter that you really need to modulate for hi-hats. And you could take this super tight sound and add it to any sound type, any other noise, right? And then you can layer that with your snares, for instance, like to get some interesting little like transient peaks built in with some interesting texture. All right, what's everyone saying at the end here? Roku is asking, so when can we start submitting content to the ADD universe, Audio Design Desk universe? Right now it's going to be locked down and it will be invite only. We will open this up to everyone. It's going to be a bit of a process, so some people will have to be more patient than others. That said, Roku, if you want to have a conversation about this right now, shoot me a message. Because you can, yeah, we'll just start talking. Iron Imp is saying, I don't know if we've spoken to MIDI sequencing traditional guitar kits or metal or rock recording artists, both within and outside of electronic music. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And no, we have not yet. Yeah, I love diode distortion. Oh, Liv, I didn't even hear you guys raid. When was that? 5 minutes ago. How was your stream? How are you? I was probably playing with distortion or something when you guys came in. Thank you, Evans the Bard. We'll catch up soon. Hey, Liv, how's school going? Rums for everyone. Good old Massive, right, Christoph? 808 Hat 101. I like that. Time to go rake some leaves. Yeah, dude, record that. Make a shaker. Absolutely. And then upload the sample for us in the Discord so we can all play with it. When we get back in 2 days, that's Wednesday, not tomorrow, but the next day, we'll have a production stream of some sort. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be. I think I'm going to finish up a few hundred more UI sounds over the next couple days, so it might not be UI sounds for you guys. It might be something else. We'll figure it out, though. If there are requests, Maybe I'll entertain one. You guys can drop requests in the Discord. Heidi says, I haven't been in Canada all year. What? Made some D&B and did some feedback. Good to hear, Liv. Good to hear. School's going well, liking the semester way more than last semester. Good, good, good. And trying to get my foot in the door at the conservatory. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, you go. You go. Hard to convince music academics that D&B or anything other than jazz and classical are valid, right? Oh. Iron Imp says, I request you keep on being OhmLab. I love your streams. Well, thank you, sir. But actually, if you could show off the spectral side of alchemy, that'd be ace. Yeah, we can do that as well. We can do that as well. All right, so let's go see who's playing. Let's go see who's playing. Let's see who's up and who's doing what. I'll get this week posted to the classroom on the Discord. For now, your homework assignment for this week is to make 3 custom drum kits. And you don't need to be worried about genres. This is just for the classroom experience. Using samples. So you're going to make drum kits, a few of them, using samples. And at least one kit should include sounds that are not traditional drum sounds. I don't care what kind of music you make. Take a step out on the edge and make something that is not just traditional drum sounds. They can be chicken cluck sounds for all I care. You've got a sample pack free this month called Found Sounds for Beat Makers over on the Discord waiting for you. If you're currently a subscriber, you can use those. And that's it. That's it. I do also have here, make one kit entirely out of synthesized percussive and complementary sounds. If you want to take a swipe at some synthesis, you can do that as well. It's really just about going through the process again and again and again until you start to get comfortable. I don't know if I really want to go to any of these guys. Who's up right now that is doing good stuff? BeatStars. Guess we could go see if they're talking making money or something today, huh? Yeah, let's just go see. Maybe they're talking money or something today and you guys can learn something new. All right, kitty cats, I will see you again on Wednesday. Thank you so much for being here with me and for making your brains bigger with me. Hopefully the zombies don't get us. I'll see y'all on the flip. Peace out.
Goal is every single day to get 1 fan a day. If we look 30 days and our fan and our artists haven't grown by 30 fans, we've done something wrong. And people think that that's so simple. It's way harder than it looks, but also way easier than it looks. And this isn't an additional person to follow you or like you on Instagram. That's going to happen. But 1 fan a day is somebody who's engaged with you. If you don't have anybody engaged with you right now, your goal should be 1 fan. 1 fan, right? I think I may be maybe PJ's 5th fan, right? Because he doesn't have crazy engagement, but he's persistent. And I know that's going to lead to something because I want him to win now too. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to figure it out. But let's see, tried so many times to get in touch with Key Facts. Well, you got to look in. This is the way to get in touch with Key too. You got to have something that she wants. She occasionally will drop a link to her Calendly so you can schedule time with her. And it's usually like $250